This video will cover Chapter 10, Section 1, Exponents. The standards that align with this video are 8.EE.1. The objective of this video is to use the properties of integer exponents to generate equivalent expressions. An example of a power. A power is a product of repeated factors. There are many components to a power. The first is the base. In this instance, 2 would be our base. A base of a power is the common factor. The next component would be our exponent. In this example, 5 would be our exponent. An exponent of a power indicates the number of times that the base is used in a factor. The base and the exponent combined makes up the power. When this power is evaluated, we see that 2, our base, is used as a factor 5 times. Here we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in other words, we multiply 2, the base, by itself 5 times because our exponent is 5. Let's start an example. We are going to write an expression using exponents. The first step is to find our base. In this example, our base would be -7 because it is our common factor. So we would rewrite our base as -7. The next step is to find our exponent. Here we see that we have 1, 2, 3 -7s multiplied by each other. So our exponent would be 3. Our final power would just be -7 raised to the third power. Let's try another example. We are going to rewrite this example using exponents. Here we see 2 different things multiplied by each other. That would be pi and r. So we are going to have 2 different bases. Here we have pi as base 1 and r as base 2. So we will write down pi and r as our 2 bases. Next, we have to find the exponents. When we look at pi, we see that there are 2 pi's multiplied by each other. So our exponent for pi would be 2. When we look at r, we see 1, 2, 3 r's multiplied by each other. So our exponent for r would be 3. So our final power would be pi squared r cubed. This would be our final answer. Now we will do the reverse, and we will evaluate the expression. Here we see our base is going to be -2. So we write down -2. Now, we see our exponent is 4. So we are going to multiply our base by itself 4 times because our exponent is 4. So our base is going to be our common factor multiplied by itself 4 times due to the exponent 4. When we multiply -2 by -2, we get 4. And this is positive because a negative multiplied by a negative is a positive. When we multiply our other factors of -2 by -2, we also get a positive 4. So now we have positive 4 multiplied by positive 4. Positive 4 multiplied by positive 4 is going to be positive 16 because a positive multiplied by a positive is a positive. This would be our final answer. If our exponent were to be a 5 rather than a 4, we would have an extra factor of -2 multiplied by this. So now we would have 16 multiplied by a -2. 16 multiplied by 2 is equal to 32. And this would be negative because a positive multiplied by a negative equals a negative. A good tip to remember is if an exponent is even, the answer is going to be positive. If the exponent is odd, the answer is going to be negative. But this is only the case if the negative is inside the parentheses alongside the number, as we see here. This does not apply if the negative is not in parentheses alongside the number. Let's try an example where the negative is not in parentheses alongside the number. Here we have -2 raised up to the 4th power. In this instance, 2 would be our common factor rather than -2. Because the exponent is 4, we will multiply 2 by itself 4 times because our exponent is 4. Now, just because the negative is not in parentheses with the 2 does not mean that we ignore it. Instead, we will put parentheses around our power and put the negative on the outside. Now, instead of having 4 negatives, we are only going to have 1. So we would take 2 multiplied by 2 to get 4. And 2 multiplied by 2 to get 4. And this is all going to be multiplied by a negative. 4 times 4 is equal to 16. Because we have a positive from our 4 multiplied by 4 multiplied by a negative, our answer is going to be negative. So in review, if you have your negative in parentheses with your number, if the exponent is even, the answer is positive. If the exponent is odd, the answer is negative. If the negative is not in parentheses with your number, your answer is going to be negative. Always, no matter if the power is even or odd. Now let's review our order of operations. Many of you may know the phrase, "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally." This is an acronym for parentheses, exponent, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. This is the order that you perform your operations in. Let's try an example. Our first step is to look for P parentheses. In this example, we do not see any parentheses, so we just move on. Next, we look for E exponents. Here, we have the exponent of 4, so we are to start with this first. So we rewrite everything else and evaluate our exponent. And our exponent of 3 to the 4th power is just 3 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 3. So that's the same as 9 multiplied by 9, which is 81. So instead of writing 3 to the 4th power, we're going to replace that with 81. So our E is complete. Next, we are to do M multiplication. So that means that we would do 2 multiplied by 8 because of our multiplication symbol here. So we rewrite everything else. So we write 3 plus, and 2 multiplied by 81 is 162. So instead of rewriting 2 multiplied by 81, we replace it with 162. So now that one is complete. Next, we look for division. We do not see any division in this problem, so we write a check and move on. Next, we look for addition. Here we see 3 added to 162. This changes to 165. Now we look at S, subtraction. There is no subtraction, so 165 is going to be our final answer. Let's try another example. Our first step is to look for the P, parentheses. We see no parentheses, so we just write a check. Next, we look for E, exponents. Here we have the exponent of 3 to the third power. So that's 3 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 3. Now 3 times 3 is 9. And 9 multiplied by 3 is going to give us 27. Now, let's look at 8 to the second power. So that would just be 8 multiplied by 8, which gives us 64. So now we would rewrite this as 3 cubed would now be replaced with 27, and 8 squared would now be replaced with 64. So we write 27 minus 64 divided by 2. So our exponent is complete. Next we do multiplication. Here we see no multiplication signs, so we just write a check. Next, we look at division. Here we see one division here, where it's 64 divided by 2. So we rewrite everything else, so we keep the 27, and we subtract 64 divided by 2, which is 32. So now our division is checked off. Next, we look for addition. Here we do not see any addition in our problem, so we write a check. Next, we look at subtraction. Here we see 27 subtracted from 32, which gives us negative 5. And that would be our final answer. For further assistance, look in your book on pages 412 through 413 for example problems that are completed step by step. Your homework that must be completed for class tomorrow is page 414, problems 3, 7, 11, and 12, and page 415, problem number 21. These will be turned in at the beginning of class on Monday, September the 14th.